So this is the rear end for the abandoned Trans Am project. It is a factory GM 10 bolt. They have a horrible reputation. This is not what's going to be in it permanently, but it's what we're going to use to get it rolling, get it tuned, get it road tested before we decide to upgrade to something. If you build these to the 9s, I've read different articles. I think common consensus is they'll handle 400 to 425 wheel horsepower fully built. Definitely not worth investing in, but it's what came in the car. We're going to re-gear it for about 225 bucks, so it's a quick band-aid. We're going to swap out the stock 342s for a set of 390s. We're going to stick it back in the car, and like I said, this is just to get us on and off the dyno, get some road testing through the car, and then kind of figure out what rear end and tire combination we're going to run. This ideally will never see a drag radial. I don't think it'll survive very long with a drag radial. If you were doing street driving, 3rd and 4th gear pulls, I think that'd be fine. 1-2 shifts, 2-3 shifts on a radial that hooks up, I think you're going to smoke this thing with any amount of power. So we're going to get into it now. We're going to put an XL gear set in it. It's XL by Richmond. It's a super budget gear set we grabbed from Summit. I think the gear set itself was 186 bucks. Install kit's 45. Can't beat it. It's cheap stuff. We know the rear end's going to blow up. Ideally, we're going to swap it out before it spins the front part off of it and trashes the exhaust in the bottom of the car with a flailing drive shaft. So again, temporary use only. So we're going to dive into this thing and get the cover pulled off. We're going to run through a time lapse. I've already got this thing halfway apart and cleaned up, so I'm not going to get into too much detail. This is not a how-to channel. This is just simply me taking you guys along for the ride of getting my old Trans Am back on the road. And this is an important step of getting the thing literally back on the ground. Right now it's jacked up. It's been on front tires for 2 months. I've just been very busy, but we're going to tackle this. We're going to install the gear set. I'll walk you guys through how I lash the gears and do the backlash and the pattern on it. So let's jump in. I'm sure I'm going to get a little bit of YouTube flack for this, but we got to make the 10 bolt work for now. That's just the budget we're working with. That's the reality of project cars. You can't get everything right at the beginning. You have to do what's realistic, and what's realistic is re-gearing the stock 10 bolt and making the best of it. Okay, these are all torqued per the instructions that came with the gear set. 3/8 by 3/4 right hand thread, 45 to 50 foot-pounds. I set the digital torque wrench to 50. Each one was torqued between 50 and 50.6. But so I marked them with a blue Sharpie as I was going to make sure that I didn't re-torque or miss one. And then when I was finished, I went the whole way around it. So the reason I went the whole way around it, one, just to make sure that I didn't mark the wrong one, but two, as you relieve torque across the gear, some of these can be under tension and give you a false torque and loosen up. Great example, this one over here, when I went back to torque it the second time, it was at like 36 foot-pounds. So I hit it with the wrench. You know, I just go in sequence. I don't actually look at it. I just listen for the beep, 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 beep. And then this one spun probably 1/8 of a turn. So always check them twice, but don't increase the torque on the second run. Just go very, very slow. As soon as you hear that beep or you hear that click, or even back your torque wrench off 1 or 2 foot-pounds for the double check, just to see if any loosened up. Perfect example of why, you know, this one loosened up quite a bit when you relieve the pressure of the whole ring gear. So. Now that the ring gear is installed in the center section, I actually find this to be the trickiest part of re-gearing a rear end, and that's using a crush sleeve and getting the drag on the pinion gear correct. This gear set did not come with instructions, but I've read in the past and I've had good luck in the past with setting a gear set up with new carrier bearings to 25 inch-pounds of rotational drag. You have to be extremely careful when you're doing this because it's a very, very, very small window. 25 inch-pounds is a small setting. That torque wrench is crushing that crush sleeve quickly, and it goes from nothing to 25 within a matter of like a 64th of a turn. So you see me checking it quite a bit, but that's the reason why. Okay, I'm gonna do a poor job of explaining this because I'm not a fancy mechanic, but backlash is the amount of difference between the ring gear and the pinion gear. So for this gear set, between 0.007 and 0.009. Okay, so I got the tool set up here. It's going to be pretty hard to do it and hold the GoPro, but I'm going to do my best. I've got, you can hear it clicking, 3 thousandths. So that's out of spec. So what I've got to do is take shims from here. I basically have to make the left side longer than the right side to move that gear away and create more space between those two. So when people talk about setting backlash, that's what they're talking about, is taking a dial indicator and checking the free play. All right, so we got the shims swapped side to side. I actually got rid of the solid factory shim and I put 2 adjustable ones in there. I took 10 thou out of total shim. The rear end was like welded in. I put the dial indicator transverse on the pinion gear, rocked it back and forth to make sure there was no side-to-side movement in it. I think I had it a little bit too tight the first time, so I'm comfortable taking that stuff out, not worrying about it. Back to the backlash. So spec on this is from 7 to 9 thousandths. So I got it zeroed, there's 10, we're at 8, on the money. It sounds super loose, but I'm being very gentle. This is really how it should act. So the next step in this is going to be to check the contact pattern of the gears, which I'll set the GoPro up for that. Okay, we got our lash set. We went ahead and put some paint on there. We got our contact set. You can see that the heel or the drive side is towards the inside of the ring gear, and then the coast, I have that backwards. Yeah, coast side's a little bit out, push side's a little bit in. That's actually what they call for right here in the manual. You can see the drive side slightly inside, the coast side slightly outside. So according to the manufacturer, that's how they want these gears set up. Luckily, I don't have a pinion depth checker. However, the gear head said plus 0.005. I just swapped shims. I didn't measure it. I should have for reference, but it seemed like it worked out really well. So yeah, we're going to run it. Everything's torqued down, rechecked the lash. Pre-torque, post-torque, gear lash is 8 thousandths. Gasket maker, just gray stuff around here to double up the Velcro gasket here, just to make sure everything's sealed. These things are kind of notorious for leaking. I don't know the origin of this rear end, so cheap insurance. We know this rear end's not going to be permanent in the car, but we're going to do what we can to make sure it lasts as long as possible. With this stuff, I'm just throwing some gray RTV on it, as well as a gasket. I've had pretty good luck with kind of triple layering it. I'll put some on the actual axle housing cover, and I'll put some on the differential itself, and kind of sandwich that gasket in there. I don't know why. I've never had one of these in any of the 4th gens I've had, or however many times I've had it apart, not leak. This is the best thing you can kind of do. Biggest tip on this, just make sure the RTV is on the inside of the bolt holes. Otherwise, if you get it on the outside only, you're not really creating a seal. you're just making an area where it can leak through the bolts themselves. As far as RTV and the bolt holes, again, not concerned with that. When you run those bolts in, they're going to move that RTV out of the way anyway. So I did go online. I did find a torque spec for these. I saw 25 foot-pounds. I'm going to let it dry, and I'm going to reset it to 25 foot-pounds before I put oil in it and install it in the car. So as far as a coating, I'm just using a generic rubberized undercoating. We know this thing's going to be temporary under the car. I just want it to look good. I want to get rid of the rust, give it a little bit of protection from whatever elements it gets exposed to. This car will not likely be driven in the rain or the snow ever again, but I think it just looks a lot better with a nicely refinished paint job on it. So we slapped some of this on there. It turned out absolutely awesome, and I can't wait to stick it back under the car and see what it looks like. Huge thank you if you guys have stuck around this long. If you like what we're doing here, putting this Trans Am back on the road, make sure you like the video. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about what direction we're going, and subscribe to the video. This came out awesome. This is kind of what we're going to continue doing. Piece by piece, we're going to get this thing back on the road and get it working again.